Jack did not climb the beanstalk for gold. By the time the beanstalk split the sky in two, the village had already decided who Jack was. Reckless, greedy, dreaming of treasure instead of working the fields like everyone else. When the cow was traded for a handful of strange beans, the laughter lasted longer than the outrage. Jack wants adventure, they said. Jack wants gold. They never asked what Jack wanted to fix. The drought had started months before the beanstalk appeared. The river that once carved a bright line through the valley had shrunk to a thin, stubborn stream. Crops failed in uneven patches, as if something in the soil had lost its memory of how to grow. The wind changed directions without warning. Nights were colder than they should have been. Even the birds migrated in confused spirals overhead. The elders blamed bad luck. The priest blamed forgotten prayers. The merchants blamed each other. Jack watched the sky. There were patterns in the clouds that did not feel natural. Storms gathered too neatly. Sunlight broke through at exact intervals, almost as if measured. Once, at dawn, Jack thought Jack saw a shadow above the highest clouds, massive, unmoving. When the old traveller offered the beans in exchange for the family cow, Jack did not see magic. Jack saw possibility. The beanstalk grew in a single night, thick as a tower and twisting upward until it vanished into the white. The village gathered in the morning, gasping, whispering about fortune and folly. Some spoke of cutting it down immediately. Some spoke of climbing it for treasure. Jack said nothing. At first light the next day, before anyone could stop Jack, Jack began to climb. The air thinned as Jack ascended. Wind tugged at clothes. Leaves the size of shields brushed against hands. Below, the village shrank into a patchwork of rooftops and fields, fragile and small. Above, the clouds were no longer distant shapes. They were walls. Jack broke through into sunlight. The sky kingdom stretched beyond imagination. Floating fields drifted on layers of mist. Rivers of silver light cut between structures carved from stone that shimmered faintly blue. Everything felt larger, quieter, controlled, and at the center stood a fortress. The giant's fortress rose from a slab of cloud-solid ground, its gates built for beings far taller than Jack. No smoke rose from its towers, no music echoed from within. The place felt less like a home and more like a machine. Jack crossed the open ground carefully. No guards, no patrols, only wind and distant rumbling, rhythmic and steady. Inside, the halls were immense. Chains hung from vaulted ceilings, thick as tree trunks. Wheels turned slowly in hidden alcoves, gears meshing with deliberate precision. Through high windows, Jack glimpsed mechanisms embedded into the sky itself, metal rings encircling patches of cloud, directing currents of air. The rumbling was not random, it was regulation. Jack followed the sound into a chamber where the giant stood. The giant was not asleep, the giant was not roaring. The giant stood beside a massive console of levers and stone dials carved with symbols Jack did not understand. Each movement of the giant's hand shifted something outside. Wind direction, cloud density, light intensity. The giant turned. Jack froze. The giant's face was lined, not with cruelty, but with exhaustion. Eyes the color of storm clouds narrowed slightly, assessing. "You are smaller than I expected," the giant said. The voice was deep, but not explosive, controlled like thunder heard from a distance. "I did not expect to be expected," Jack replied, forcing steadiness. The giant studied Jack. "You climbed for gold?" "No," Jack said. "The land below is dying." The giant's gaze sharpened. "It is surviving." That is not the same. Silence stretched between them. Outside, a gust of wind shifted abruptly, as if responding to the conversation. The drought? Jack continued. The storms. They started before the beanstalk grew. The giant looked back at the levers. Balance is fragile. Jack stepped closer to the console, careful not to touch anything. Symbols marked each dial: sun, rain, frost, wind. Some were fixed in place with heavy iron locks. Why lock them? Jack asked. To prevent excess. From whom? The giant's expression hardened slightly. From those below. Jack felt a flicker of anger. We are starving. And yet you build fires larger each year, the giant said. You clear forests, you dig deeper, the smoke rises, the air changes, my work grows harder. Jack had not expected accusation. The Sky Kingdom and the land below were once governed together, the giant said. An agreement. You maintained the soil, we maintained the weather. For generations, balance held. What happened? Jack asked. You forgot. The giant gestured toward a series of cracked stones embedded in the wall. Ancient markings, faded and broken. The agreement required restraint, the giant said. When restraint ended, intervention became necessary. Jack's thoughts raced. The elders had stories about spirits in the sky, warnings about greed. They had sounded like myths. You tightened the weather, Jack said slowly, to force us to change. I limited abundance, the giant corrected. So you would remember scarcity. The words landed heavily. Children are hungry, Jack said, and clouds are choking, the giant replied. Neither voice rose, neither needed to. Jack walked to the window and looked down through layers of cloud. The village was invisible from this height, just haze and distance. You could speak to us, Jack said. You would not listen. That is not your decision. It is observation. Jack turned back. And if you are wrong? The giant hesitated. For the first time, something uncertain flickered in the giant's expression. There are forces above even this kingdom, the giant said carefully. If I release full rain without correction below, floods follow. If I return steady sun without reduction of smoke, heat intensifies. Every lever carries consequence. Jack understood something then. The giant was not hoarding gold. The giant was not guarding treasure. The giant was managing damage. You are afraid, Jack said. The giant's jaw tightened. I am responsible. For both worlds. For the sky. The rest should be yours. Jack moved closer to the locked dials. Then unlock them. And trust you? Yes. The giant studied Jack for a long moment. You would return and change your village? I would tell the truth. They will call you foolish. They already do. Wind outside shifted again, restless. If I loosen the drought, the giant said, will you reduce the burnings? Will you restore what was cut? I cannot promise all, Jack said, but I can begin. The giant reached for a key hanging from a chain at the belt. The metal was enormous in the giant's hand. Slowly, deliberately, the giant unlocked one dial marked with rain. Clouds outside thickened, darkening. This is not reward, the giant warned. It is trial. Jack nodded. And the beanstalk? The giant asked. If you cut it, I am sealed from interference. If you leave it, others may climb. Jack imagined the villagers ascending with axes and sacks, expecting treasure. Imagined fear turning into attack. Imagined misunderstanding becoming war. If I cut it, Jack said, we lose connection. If you leave it, the giant said, you risk conflict. Jack stepped back from the console. The choice pressed heavier than any bag of gold could. "I will not cut it," Jack said finally, "but I will not leave it unguarded." "How?" the giant asked. "I will change what they think I climbed for." The giant watched carefully. "I will tell them there is no gold," Jack said. "No treasure, only work. They will not believe you." "Some will." Rain began to fall below, faint at first, then steadier. The giant replaced the key at the belt. "If you fail, I will tighten the sky again." "If I fail," Jack replied, "we deserve it." The giant's gaze softened just slightly. "You climbed for answers. Yes, you found responsibility." Jack turned toward the edge of the floating fields. The beanstalk twisted downward through the clouds, waiting. As Jack descended, rain touched face for the first time in months. By the time Jack reached the ground, the village was gathered again, staring upward. "Where is the gold?" someone shouted. "There is none," Jack answered. Laughter rippled through the crowd. "There is rain," Jack said instead. "And we nearly lost it." The elders frowned. The merchants scoffed. But farmers looked up at the clouds with cautious hope. "They control the sky," Jack continued, "but we control the soil. If we burn and take without restoring, they will answer. If we repair, they will loosen." "You expect us to believe that," a voice called. "I expect you to choose," Jack said. That night, rain soaked the valley steadily. Not a storm, not a flood, just enough. Some villagers still called Jack foolish. Some called Jack liar. A few called Jack brave. Over the next weeks, fields were replanted differently. Fires were smaller. Forest edges were marked for preservation. Not perfectly, not entirely, but deliberately. Above the clouds, the giant adjusted the levers less often. The beanstalk remained, tall and green, no longer a symbol of greed but of connection. Children asked about it not with hunger for treasure, but with curiosity about balance. Years later, stories would change. Some would still claim Jack climbed for gold and found none. Some would say Jack outsmarted a monster. Some would simplify it into hero and villain, but the land remembered the rain, and the sky remembered that someone had climbed not to steal, but to understand. Perspective had shifted. Greed had not driven the climb. Responsibility had. And that made all the difference.